if you bring in a diversity in voices, the stories are going to be different just because of the difference in backgrounds. And like, I think everyone brings such a different perspective. And as women, we move through the world in a different way.
That's Katya Martin, and this is the Powerful Ladies Podcast. Hey guys, I'm Kara Duffy, a business coach and entrepreneur on a mission to help you live your most extraordinary life by showing you anything truly is possible. People who have mastered freedom, ease, and success, who are living their best and most ridiculous lives and are making an impact, are often people you've never heard of until now. My love language is collaborating. There is nothing more fun than working with amazing people to make something you're proud of. Today's guest, Katya Martin, shares that passion for creating and collaborating. She's a filmmaker, actor, most recently on Promised Land on ABC and Hulu, a producer, and all-around creative who's committed to telling authentic stories and giving more women a place to tell their own. She is definitely someone I'm keeping in my circle. Welcome to the Powerful Ladies Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's really an honor. Let's begin. Just tell everyone listening who you are, where you are, and what you're up to.
Well, my name is Katya Martin. I'm currently in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm an actor and filmmaker. I just got back to New York after shooting the show Promised Land for ABC out in LA, followed by a feature film called Death That Awaits.
And, you know, I was connected to you through Alex Lawson.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Who was so excited about how committed you are to telling female stories and having female crews. How did you and Alex meet? And, you know, where did your passion for working with fellow powerful ladies come from?
Yeah. So Alex and I met through this women's coaching group. We did this ladies mastermind coaching group session back in, I think it was 2019. No. It was COVID. So it was like 2020. I guess it was over a year ago. That's a funny thing. So Alex is, I guess, technically like a COVID friend of mine. We've actually never met in person, even though we've known each other for about 2 years. But I've met her husband in person. I ended up working on a acrylics video. So he and I met in person, Chris. So that both of us can't wait to actually meet and give each other a physical hug. But yeah, I mean, I got into film and TV pretty young. I always really wanted to act and make movies. And I think I kind of realized pretty quickly, especially I moved to New York when I was 17 and went to NYU here and started working. And I think I realized pretty quickly that I didn't really have any female mentors or women to aspire to look up to and aspire to be. And it took me a really, really long time to actually feel like I had a female support group. And so more and more, I just started trying to find those women and reach out more, get to work with them more, and just build those relationships. I think especially in film and TV, so much of what we do is so personal, and you work such long hours, super close to people, and to be able to have a kind of a community around your creative work, I think is really important. And for me, as a young woman moving to New York by myself, it was really important to find those other women too.
Mm-hmm. Well, it makes me think of, often people don't associate the parallels between being a creative or an actor and being an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so missed. I was listening to an episode of Smartless yesterday, which has become my whenever I'm driving around and I'm having a bad day, I'm like, one episode of that, I will laugh. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
But they were talking about, Jason Bateman regularly speaks to that no one understands what it's like to constantly be pitching yourself and constantly getting rejected and not having that security. Because he's thinking actor to corporate life. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
listening, I'm like, Jason, that's what I do every day. Like
Yeah.
if you represent yourself, like that's what
Mm-hmm.
life is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, totally. And like you're literally just like standing out there
Mm-hmm.
letting people judge you and like asking them to, and then 9 times out of 10 it's like, no, that's not what we want next.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I'm so appreciative when someone says yes, like yes to this
Mm-hmm.
podcast, yes to hiring me as a coach, like whatever it is. It's like I so appreciate the yes, because it's not just, and I'm curious if you feel the same way. It's not just a
Mm-hmm.
yes to me or my identity. It's an opportunity for me to be a contribution and a
Mm-hmm.
connection. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not just a yes. It's
Mm-hmm.
the ability to give all these things that we have to give.
Yeah, and what you just said about it's an opportunity, like it's also an opportunity to learn. And I think,
Yeah.
so many times, especially in the creative business, where I don't know if it's only in like creative industries. I think it's kind of everywhere. Where, like, it's so easy to just give the job to someone you know, and if you don't know people, it's hard to get that first job. And so to have someone give you that yes, they're also
Yeah.
giving you the opportunity to learn, to have something else on your resume,
Mhm.
to get to prove yourself, to get to figure out what works, what doesn't work. I mean, and that was something like, for example, Alex, like reached out to me. It was so random, but after we'd known each other for a while, I had like quit my job here in New York and I went out to LA just for like literally a hot second to kind of like recenter myself.
Mhm.
And it just so happened that they were doing a video out there in San Diego, actually, where I have family, and she was like, "Oh, well, would you want to do it? Like, could you do this?" Even though she had, we had never worked together before, we had never
Mhm.
worked in person, but like she trusted me with that, and that gave me such a huge like bump
Mhm.
to then, be able to go off and do other things.
Yeah, I don't know anyone that gets any job without knowing someone first. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, that's why I'm such a big connector. I tell people, I'm like, if I'm connected to someone, if you see it on LinkedIn or anywhere else, you can tell them I said you should connect, because whoever asks, I'm going to say it anyway. Unless
Mm-hmm.
there's very few people I'd be like, no, don't use my name. But most people are good, and they are awesome, and they are like, especially people taking the effort to
Mm-hmm.
be in motion. It
Yeah,
changes everything.
yeah, no, for sure.
Besides Alex, who are some people or powerful ladies that have given you those opportunities that opened up huge doors for you?
Um, Gosh, one of my best friend mentors, older sisters, is a woman named Catherine Kendall, who I adore, but she is one of the nicest, most generous people. And she's been such an advocate for me. Um, Drew Dixon is another woman who, has just given me so much support and love and opportunity. Um, Dee Dee Wong, is a very new and powerful new friend and mentor of
Mhm.
mine. I honestly, like, this sounds so cliche, but like my mom is like one of the women that I
Mhm.
just like look up to so much. She just doesn't work in film at all. Like
Mhm.
she's a teacher, and now, or she was a teacher. She now has become a school psychologist. She got her master's and changed careers at, in midlife. But she's taught me so much about just being present and kind of, weighing through or like wading through the moments of struggle, and just like knowing where you're going,
Mhm.
and being calm and grounded. I think those are four of the like strongest female presence in my life as like women that I look up to.
Yeah. If you look back at 8-year-old you, would you
Mm.
imagine that you're at where you are now?
Ah, no. I think 8-year-old me like didn't really have a vision of like what working in, like, I knew I loved movies and I knew I wanted to
Mhm.
make them, but I had no idea what that meant,
Mhm.
in terms of lifestyle. I don't think I ever saw myself as producing and like putting teams together and like not staying in one city for for more than a couple months. It actually, I think it was around when I was 7 or 8 that I did kind of click into the idea that film was a career that people did. We had this, it was like the first kind of DVD behind the scenes package that we had gotten. And it was, I remember so clearly, it was Lord of the Rings. And I remember seeing for the first time, like someone who had like, whatever, had a camcorder BTS and was just filming. And like, you saw the director, you saw the actors, you saw like the makeup artist doing the touch ups. And that was the first time I was like, oh, wait, oh, those are, I could be that person. That's a person that's doing that. So it was around that time that I was like, oh, maybe that's something I could do. But I had no idea that it would mean what I'm doing now.
Yeah. When, you know, because you've kind of been going back and forth, right, between being in front of the camera, being behind the camera, collaboration. How has that flow happened for you? And has it been very organic, or have you been surprised at, you know, behind or in front of the lens? Which one showed up for you?
A bit of both. I think the getting into, so my first kind of focus when I was little and what I kind of wanted was acting, was being in front of the camera. But the being behind the camera, I think it flowed. I flowed pretty easily into it, where I just kind of, I started writing, and I started just kind of like, when I was little, I would put little family movies together with my cousins and things like that. And then that kind of just evolved into making my first few short films. And when I came out to New York, I was studying communications at NYU, and I ended up doing a minor in like producing and entertainment business. And so that kind of opened my mind even more of like what actually goes into producing movies and TV and what actually has to happen. And then I kind of just learned on the job, where like I needed money and someone needed an assistant producer for a super low budget commercial. And I was like, yeah, I can, sure, absolutely. And I did internships for like event planning and stuff like that. And so those sorts of things kind of helped each other out in a way. And I think I've also just been really lucky to get to work with people who are kind of just there to create and are down to bring in new people just to learn. And kind of, if you can run at that pace and like run it and gun it, then you're in. So I learned a lot on the job. And it's been cool getting to go from like low budget, like commercial music video to then like get to act in an ABC show. Like they're such different worlds, but at the same time, they're similar in a lot of ways when you have like the right people around.
I mean, did you have a fangirl moment for yourself when you have seen your face on the big, you know, the ABC in New York? Like, what is that like?
It was weird. I think what was most strange about it was that it wasn't so much the seeing my face on a TV screen. It was more like the reaction of people that I didn't know or who I haven't heard from who had seen it, because up until I'd like done other movies and TV that like I don't think many people have seen, but this was something that was just at a completely different level. And so that I think was kind of the most surprising part of it, of like, oh, people other than my family circle are actually seeing this show. That's kind of cool. Okay. So that I think was the most like shocking.
Yeah. Well, it's just, there's, on the journey of life, there keeps being moments like that, right? Because obviously our goals and what's next change. And I think it's so magical when you have that moment where it's like, holy shit, like this, I thought about it, I imagined it, I didn't think it actually happened. Like we're so good at, some of us anyway, of like saying it's going to happen and just head down, working. And so when you pause and look up and you're like, holy shit, that happened. Okay. Like it motivates me for what's next. Does it for you?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I have
You're
the
in
New
New
York
York
traffic noise in the background. I'm sorry if you can hear that. But sorry to go back to your question. Yes, that I'm one of those people too, of like finishing something and already being on to the next thing, and that's something that like my mom reminds me of all the time is just like the hold on for a second
Mm-hmm.
and honoring the in between moments between your, I guess, either goals or accomplishments or jobs, whatever those are. Kind of learning to sit and acknowledge them before moving on, even if you are on a job and you have to start the next job within 2 days. You can start that next job, but at least carve out some sort of time or some sort of process for you to acknowledge what you just did before just completely discarding it and moving forward.
Yeah. I had the pleasure of spending Memorial Day weekend at the Telluride Mountain Film Fest.
Oh, wow. Oh, awesome.
It was very cool. I had not been to a mountain film festival before. Telluride has a separate Telluride Film Festival, which is usually more Hollywood celebrity style. But mountain film is adventure. It started off with like ski movies. So it's like action sports angle, nature, outdoors. But they really focus on social and environmental activism. And so the movies were so interesting about, telling Native voices as a professional skier and what that means. There's a whole amazing one about saving the Amazon rainforest. And it was so great to see the diversity of storytellers. With that being important to you, like, what is it about the storytelling that you think is so critical for more women voices and more women crews to be creating together?
If you bring in a diversity in voices, the stories are going to be different just because of the difference in backgrounds and in lens, for lack of a better word, no pun intended. I think everyone brings such a different perspective, and as women, we move through the world in a different way. Our experience walking down the street is different than men's. It's and mine walking down the street is different than yours, and is different than an African American woman, an Asian woman. We all experience life in very different ways, and so the more different voices who are coming to the table to tell stories, the more unique those stories are going to be told. I think that's the same for including people who come from different cultural backgrounds, different just different ethnicities. It all just brings such a richer palette to the project that you're working on, because you have different inputs. I think, like, for example, just a small example of that on Promised Land, my character comes from Mexico, and kind of in my storyline, there was a lot of Spanish being spoken. And even though me and my co-stars were all fluent in Spanish, we really wanted to make sure that the Spanish that was being spoken was from Mexico, where these characters are from. And bringing in, we were so blessed and lucky that the production brought in Manuel Uriza, who was not only our like translator and dialect coach, but also in a sense our cultural coach, and those things. Just a little like phrases and things, like instead of saying hi, how are you, the what's up, or like the the dude, or the slang kind of thing. Like that's something that I've had so many people reach out to me saying like how they saw their family represented in that, because that was familiar to them. And going that extra step of actually bringing in the people who can give input on that, whereas like you or I might not have that knowledge. I think that's really important in the storytelling and in the discussion on representation too. It's not just having someone that looks a certain way that can fill, that can tick the box of like, oh, we need 5 women on this crew. Okay, great. But if none of them are actually bringing what that position needs, like we're kind of at the same starting place. And they're also, if they're then not able to do the job, well, that also reflects badly on them. So then we're in this kind of vicious, unproductive cycle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think both are important and true.
Yeah. Well, and just the authenticity of it, right? Because it
Mm-hmm.
does, even across the US, if everyone's speaking English, there are times we don't understand each other because the slang is so different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's always entertaining when you are speaking with someone else who is fluent in your language, but isn't native or
Mm-hmm.
isn't from your area of language. And it's like the funniest stories to me. Like the lost in translation is what
Mm-hmm.
kills me. And it's some of my funniest stories to retell are from living abroad and having that experience and
Mm-hmm.
both feeling like an idiot and like getting to laugh at, oh yeah, that makes no sense. I have no idea why we say that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I love that so much. Like a lot of the stuff that I write involves people coming from different backgrounds or having those
Mm-hmm.
miscommunications or speaking different languages. Because I think that's, I mean, that to me it resonates because it's so much of how I grew up. But I think it's like
Mm-hmm.
that just makes us so much more attuned to what's happening in the world and how different people are relating to each other.
Yeah. Did you grow up in San Diego? I know you said you have
Um,
family here now.
Yeah, I went to high school there. My mom's from there, and my dad is from Madrid in Spain. So I grew up in Valencia. So we don't actually
Nice.
have any family there, but
Mhm.
I grew up in Valencia, Spain, not Valencia, California. Uh, but and then we moved to San Diego when I was 13, and then I moved to New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you going from Valencia to San Diego?
Uh, it was. I think I was a lot more excited about it before it happened, and then it actually happened, and I hated it. At that point, I knew that I wanted to work in movies and film and TV,
Mhm.
even though I was 13 and not at the age of working yet. But uh, to me, San Diego was very close to Hollywood, and so I kind of had this, very naive teenage idea in my mind that I would get there and be able to be on Disney Channel shows and just become a working actor at the age of 14 by then. And I very quickly realized that that wasn't going to be the case. And I think it was that disappointment plus the suddenly feeling very isolated and very
Mhm.
just not in tune culturally with the city and with school and how in just the structure of life is set up
Mhm.
there. I had a lot of freedom in Spain where, everyone is just kind of running around and
Yeah.
walking everywhere, even though the parents are, at the little bar or cafe and they're watching you, but you think you're wandering around on your own, or
Mhm.
there's always someone in the neighborhood who's got their eye on you. But you still think you're going to the grocery store at 7 years old all by yourself. And then to suddenly go from that to needing a car to get everywhere. And,
Yeah.
you know, I wasn't very happy there.
Yeah.
But moving to New York, when I finally came out here, that felt like much more like home, like that city environment of being able to
Yes.
walk everywhere and just that energy and fast pace that was very much more what I jived with.
Well, it changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
I've moved a ton myself across the US, to Europe and back. And when you have walkability, it completely changes the cultural dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Oh
You're
yeah.
able to make friends faster. You're able to connect with people. When I moved from Europe to California, I was shocked that I'm like, oh, like I'll make friends at work. And I did, but they lived an hour away. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, the office was in Orange County. And I'm like, wait, you live in LA or you live in San Diego? Like, how are we ever supposed to hang out? Like, that's
Yeah.
traveling an hour and a half, maybe two with traffic one way to hang out. I'm like, okay, like this is so insane to me. I'm used to we're all in the same neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, and San Diego is a very unique piece of the American culture as well. It's definitely not the same as moving to Ohio or Virginia or somewhere else, for
Mhm.
better or worse, right?
Yeah.
But the car culture in the US really does take away from so much opportunity to connect.
Yeah. No, I
Mhm.
agree. I think that was one of the experiences that I had in LA this past year where because of the job I was doing, kind of had my community ingrained. And, I was so lucky that we all just got along from the get-go and really loved each other. And I had this kind of just friend group that I got to go make TV with every single day. And then as soon as we wrapped, I was like, okay, like, let's all hang out. And it was like, oh, well, one person's in Silver Lake, someone's in Los Feliz, someone's in West Hollywood, someone's in like the West Side, someone's in North Hollywood. And then it was like, oh, this is what it's like. Okay, now I understand.
Yeah. It's a little bit easier in New York.
Yeah, for sure.
I also, you're part of the team Red is Dancing. What is that? For everyone.
So Red is Dancing is sorry, I'm completely blanking on the word, a creative agency and production company that specializes in telling stories through dance. I'm now more of a freelancer with them, but I was pretty much right hand to Reda Medjalek here in New York, who's the founder of the company. The company's half in Paris, half in New York. And I learned a lot working there. We were a super small team, so everyone wore a ton of hats. And the company culture there was also one of just loving multi-hyphenates. So that was also, if I had an audition or I booked a show, it wasn't like, oh no, I have to ask for time off. It was like, yeah, Katya, go. Like, I'll handle it. Don't worry. So it was amazing. And while I was there, we produced like, gosh, I don't even know how many videos, but a lot. I was there for 3 or 4 years. And we did so many videos for dance companies like Alvin Ailey, and we worked with American Ballet Theater, but also for different organizations like the Brooklyn Museum, also brands like Red Bull Dance and Credo Beauty. So it was cool to get to just work with a lot of different clients and learn, just learn how to, I guess, tell stories through a very specific medium and also in a very short time frame.
Powerful ladies is a contradictory statement sometimes, and it can be divisive because people make power mean something different and ladies mean something different. So what does powerful and ladies as independent words mean to you? And does the definition or your relationship with those words change when they're put next to each other?
So I'm grinning because I love this question. I also, mostly because of power. I've had this discussion like several times recently with women of all people. I listen to a lot of Brene Brown podcast episodes, and I love her. But she had I think it was on her Dare to Lead podcast, because she has 2. But she was talking about power and like the different forms of power in one of her interviews, and it was kind of a big like aha moment for me. And then afterwards I was like, why is this so surprising? But just how there isn't one type of power. There's power over, power with, power for, and I think power to is the 4th one. But usually what we associate with power is power over, and that is has just traditionally been kind of what we associate with power. It's also a very masculine tendency of power, is just to use power to dominate, to have just control over something or someone, whether it's a situation or a person or an animal or whatever. And I found it so interesting because in the discussion they were talking about how that doesn't always resonate with women, or women who try to take power in a masculine way often get rejected or called the B word or whatever. Whereas if it's a man doing it, it's powerful. And I find it fascinating because I also think that women naturally tend to be givers and tend to be nurturers, and that whether that's nature or nurture, whether it's what we were taught or it's just what we're feeling, that's usually and we usually gravitate towards power with. So you also see a lot of female leaders use that in an effective way. As a like, I'm not the like say all do all. I'm asking us to do this together. I'm putting this in place for us all to move forward in the same direction. And so powerful to me, just it means finding your own way of manifesting power. And ladies, I use the term ladies all the time, and it's only been recently that I've kind of had to pause to make sure that I haven't offended anyone with the word. Yeah. And to me, I think I like the word. I like the idea of being someone, or like a lady being someone who is classy and knows what she wants, and is, I don't see a lady as someone who's demure or unintelligent. I think it's someone who's royal and very like noble, and so I personally love that word, and I use it all the time. And so the two of them together, I just am like, when I hear powerful ladies, I imagine like for lack of a better term, some really badass women who also are insanely classy, but also like know how to get shit done.
I mean, that's the definition that I built this off of, because that's how I think about it too. I see all the people on TikTok lately being like, we're starting a girl gang and we're going to get jackets. And I'm like, we already have jackets. Like, we need to be promoting ourselves more, because what? Like, we're here. No, but it's such an interesting thing, because it has been controversial of like, why powerful ladies, not powerful humans. I remember early in the podcast, someone asking if we were going to put an X in ladies. And I was like, let's see what happens. And then I'd asked a friend of mine to be on the podcast who is a guy. And I'm like, does it bother you that I'm inviting you to be on the Powerful Ladies podcast? He's like, no, it's your podcast. Like, who do you talk? If you think they're powerful, talk to them. I'm like, okay, thank you for giving me that freedom. I needed that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, one, yes, it is your podcast, but also two, like, we need to have men in the conversation too. Like, I don't think anything really gets done if you're going at it with an us versus them mentality. Yeah. Like if it's not going to be an open conversation, and we're not going to have you, like, that was what I was talking to a guy friend of mine who was going and taking his sons to all of the protests around the abortion rights and laws, and he was like, I don't know, is it weird for a guy to be going? And I was like, no, like we need men to go. Like, that's not even a question. Of course. I had a conversation with my cousin a few years ago that it's interesting, because I feel like I'm kind of in this in between generations of, like, I have my cousins who are teenagers into like very early 20s, and obviously then my parents, and I'm kind of in this weird in between of having not grown up with all of this discussion happening around diversity and gender identity, and but I'm still young enough now to like still be kind of in those conversations at my age, and not like my parents were just kind of like, oh, the young people. But my cousin at the time, they said something that just kind of hit me, where they were sharing with me, they were kind of in this in-between phase of not knowing which pronouns that they wanted to go with. And they said something about using the term she, her, or the pronouns she, her, that felt limiting to them. And there was something about that just made me feel so sad and kind of disappointed with society in a way, because there's so much that I love about being a woman. I love that like life comes out of us, that we are like, the idea of a matriarch is just so powerful to me. And at the same time, like there are a lot of things about being a woman that really annoy me and really suck. Like it sucks to walk down the street and have people catcall you and follow you and just think that they can do that because they can. And like, violence against women, and the fact that, I mean, right now, all the conversations and, fights that we're having to have over abortion rights and over the rights to control our own bodies, like that infuriates me. But at the same time, like, if I have to walk through the world dealing with that shit, you better acknowledge that I'm a woman. Like, so yes, you need to call me a lady, I'm a human, but I also walk through the world in a very specific way that's different than a man. So I want that label, and I wear that label proudly. I understand that that's not for everyone, and that not everyone agrees with that. But all of that, I have to say that I love the title of your podcast.
Thank you. Well, it's also, I think, similar to you, I'm really proud of the lineage of powerful women that I come from. Like, there are also amazing men that I come from as well. And it's not to diminish their contribution by any means, but it really is, as you said, this is how I came into this world. This is who I get to honor and continue traditions from, and to keep fighting for. I think we forget sometimes that there's so many challenges that women have around the globe, and it's easy to forget about it in short periods of time in the US because we do have so many options. And I do think that the Roe v. Wade current conversation is changing that. Like, it was in the mid-70s that women could open their own bank account and start a business under their name. It's like, what? Like, that is not far enough away. And, the women that I hang out with, like, I can't imagine any of us having to get permission about money, or permission for our business, or permission to do anything.
Yeah.
Let alone permission to, or to not have, a child. So there's a lot of work that we still have to do because it's not there for everyone yet. And I have to remind myself that also.
Oh yeah. No, I think, especially in the US, even if we're having these challenges, like, that's just the tip of the iceberg for women living elsewhere who, don't even have access to basic health care,
Well, no, and there's crossover between so many of the social causes right now. The fact that has blown my mind is that every 14 minutes, a woman in the US is killed by her partner with a gun. And you're like, what? Every 14 minutes? Like, that intersects so many issues we have in the world right now. And I'm like, how is no one losing their shit about this? Except I feel like people screaming into like an echo chamber. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's just so much that we powerful ladies have to change.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, if you look at it, like, I just remember when the pandemic really started, and when I was talking to some friends of mine who live in New Zealand, and like, and they were saying that they were, going through all the restrictions and all of that, but like the number one thing that the government was like promoting out there, it wasn't mask mandates, it wasn't keeping away 6 feet, it was being kind to each other. Like, that was the thing that that it was like a list of like COVID protocols, and like being kind to your neighbor and acknowledging that everyone is going through a hard time right now was like top of the chart.
Yeah.
Who's leading that country? A woman.
Yeah.
It's just like the amount of empathy that like I feel like we need in this country right now is a whole nother topic for another hour long.
Well, that leads me to wondering, like, what stories are you excited to tell, and do you want to be telling?
Gosh, so many. And I think for me, one of the most important parts of storytelling is for at its core for it to be universal and human. I think some of the most powerful movies or TV shows or stories period are the ones that like I might not have anything to do with the main character. I might not see myself represented in them physically or ethnically or culturally, but I can still I can still be moved by them and by their story from on a human level. And I think telling stories like that shine a light on issues and on characters that I might not have seen or might not have thought of before, but I'm suddenly completely connected with them because of the human experience. Like those are, that's really what inspires me. I think there are so many stories about, you know, people and cultures that we just don't get to see, and especially in the US market. And I think that's changing slowly. I mean, I think even shows like Squid Game or Money Heist that, you know, aren't in English period, like those things they're starting to change, but being able to tell stories about, like people who on paper have nothing to do with you, but you still like love watching them, I think is so important. I recently saw Everything Everywhere All at Once with one of my creative partners and best friends, and both of us walked out of the movie theater like completely just like mind blown. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's just such a wacky, crazy, fun movie. But also we were like, the protagonist is a middle-aged Chinese woman, and it's, you know, clearly there's it's blowing up the box office. Like it's becoming more and more, and we still have a very long way to go, but it is becoming more and more, I think, normal, quote unquote, to have leading characters that aren't kind of in the norm. And that's so exciting to me. And I just want to be able to be behind more of that and be involved with more of that.
I love that. We asked everyone on the Powerful Ladies podcast where they put themselves on the Powerful Ladies scale. If 0 is average everyday human and 10 is the most powerful lady you can imagine, where would you put yourself today and on average?
Oh gosh. I'm trying to like, see, now I'm like trying to define like, okay, what is the most powerful that I could possibly be? I'm like, well, I'm not close to like Oprah or Reese Witherspoon or like Shonda Rhimes yet.
Yes, is the key word.
I feel like I'm still pretty. I'm like, I'll give myself like a 4+. I'm like, I'm not even halfway to where I want to be, but I'm not at 0. I want to acknowledge that for myself, because I usually would not, but I've done enough to where I don't think I'm a 0, but I would say maybe like a 4.
Yeah. I think it's one of my most interesting questions. I just think I love how people respond. It says a lot about what people are reaching for and what they acknowledge themselves for, and so many things. Like, I'm happy to give it all the answers away to a psychology team or an anthropology team. I think they would. I would
be fascinated to see what they say about that.
Yeah, exactly. We could probably even just do a short film on just the women's answers and what it all means. You know, we're approaching the halfway mark of 2022. What are you most proud of accomplishing this year, and what is still on your to-do list?
I'm proud of the show that I was just on. That was the first time that I've been a series regular and on, you know, 10 episodes and filming for almost 11 months, and you know, with the breaks in between, but I am proud of that. I'm really proud of the community that we created, and the story that we were telling was very really important to me, and I'm proud of the work that we did. What do I still? I have a lot of things that I still want to accomplish. I think that was like one of the hard things I think about this industry is how much of a like unknown and start and stop it is. Where like I feel like I'm like a horse that's just been like got to trot a little bit and like got to canter a little bit, and now is like, I'm ready to gallop. Like,
Yeah.
why is there a gate in front of me, guys? Like I feel like I kind of was like, okay, let's keep going. And like I'm being reined in. But I'm also just like, I'm kind of shifting gears now too. And I have a couple of things that I'm developing and producing that I'm just kind of shifting gears into. So there's still a lot more that I want to accomplish, but more than anything, I just want to keep on working and getting to tell stories that I'm excited about.
When you're not working, what are you doing to have fun, recharge yourself, or just go out and be curious with?
I'm like active wise, I really like staying active. I love taking like just long walks, and I'm really into kickboxing and yoga. I've also recently gotten, hence the horse analogy, I've gotten really into horseback riding. Which is something that when I was little, I always really wanted to do and never, just didn't have the opportunity. And I'd ridden a little bit, but a couple of years ago, I got to go horseback riding in Mexico, and it was the first time that I ever was like on a horse, kind of free range and having to figure it out on my own. And I just loved it. So this year I got into taking lessons, and I've just become kind of a horse girl in my 20s. That was probably something I should have like done when I was 8, but I'm a horse girl now.
I always say that I feel the most proud when I am making 8-year-old me proud.
That I'm gonna quote you on that. I love that. Because it's true. I think when I was, 8 to 18, pretty much there were so many things that I wanted to do, but I either didn't have the maturity for it or, the resources for it. And I feel like now I'm getting to do the things that I'm like, no, this is my money. I get to spend it how I want. I am like, I'm a freelancer. I run my own business. I get to decide when I go on vacation and when I take the time off. And I get to, fulfill all those 8-year-old aspirations.
They're so important. I mean, that's also why I have that question, because so often it's that line, and it doesn't have to be exactly 8, but there's that crossover where we have like one foot in the anything is possible and magical imagination space, and one foot into, oh, this is the reality of what it means to be in a grown up, or work, exist in adulthood. And so there's something magical there of not being afraid to blend the two together. And I think I spend so much of my time as a coach helping people reintroduce both sides to each other. Because I mean, every day people make things, you're like, what made them think they could do it? Or who thought that would be a great idea? But guess what? Lavender ice cream is amazing. So thank you.
Yeah. No, it is so true. And I mean, that's one of the things that, even just like in acting, I feel like in acting, like 101, so many teachers I've heard them either say or tell me, like, you need to find your inner child. You have to play. And I'm, lucky enough that that's my job. And like, my job is literally to like run around playing and pretending that I'm a different person. But I think it's true. It's true for, I think, any adult, like finding that joy in things and just that creativity. Like it's one of the things that's so easily lost in to-do lists. But it's so important to hold on to.
It really is. I can't step over what message your shirt might say based on our podcast. Women don't owe you shit. Yeah.
As soon as we started, I kind of like saw it creeping up, and I was like, oh, I'm wearing that shirt. I guess it's appropriate.
It's totally appropriate. Yeah. You were subconsciously dressing for the day. It works.
I totally, my subconscious has a way with me sometimes.
Well, we know that the Powerful Ladies community is powerful and is resourceful and loves to collaborate. What is something that you need, are looking for, or are a request for?
I mean, right now, I kind of just want to meet more women who are doing cool shit. Like I'm developing and producing a couple things. My writing and creative partner, Madeline Stevenson, and I have a show that we're pitching. And I would just love to have more conversations with more women who are creating, especially in the film and TV space. I think having people that you know and get to connect with to then, like, even if it's not now, later on down the line, be like, oh wait, like I just met this woman who's an awesome cinematographer, or I met this incredible art designer who would be great for my friend's short film, or like, I just want to get to meet more people. I think especially now that COVID is, not that it's over, because everyone's like, oh, COVID's over, and it's definitely not, but I think we are starting to at least do more things that we did pre-COVID and get to connect more. I'm really just in like I hate the word networking, but I'm in like a community building phase. Yes.
Yeah, networking is such a bad rap, but it's like, no, I just want to make new friends, and we can make cool things together, and it'll be great.
Exactly. I want to find more of my people. Yes.
That is honestly the quest that I'm always on. And that is why I selfishly made this podcast.
That's a great strategy.
I encourage you to be selfish in what you make too. Well, there's been some amazing women in the film and actors who've been on here. If there's any that you would love to be introduced to, please let me know.
Thank you.
Sarah Zendaya in particular pops into my head. She's a director and filmmaker, and she's just amazing. She's a great human. It was so great to connect with her. And she also went to NYU because that's where she met Sasha Sagan, who was on the podcast first.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
I'll check out their episodes too.
Yeah. I'll send you a couple to peek at.
Oh, please.
And I might be coming through New York to do a meetup soon. So that will be fun too.
Oh, cool. Oh, let me know. I'm here at least for June, and then I'm kind of seeing what's next, but definitely let me know, please.
I will, of course. Well, everyone who now would love to know more about you, support you, follow you, where can they do that? Both you and your shows and movies.
I'm mostly on Instagram at Katya.Martin. I'm fairly new to Twitter. I'm figuring that one out a little bit, but I'm at Katya_Martin on there. And the show is called Promised Land. It's at Promised Land ABC on, I think, both Instagram and Twitter.
And it's also available on Hulu?
It is on Hulu. Yes, okay. It's on Hulu.
Perfect.
All 10 episodes.
Yes. Okay. Well, it has been such a pleasure to have you. Thank you for being a yes to me and the podcast. And just thank you for being another woman out there who is following your heart and your passions and wants to create and collaborate with the rest of us around you. So just thank you. It makes me feel better knowing that people like you are out there.
No, thank you so much for facilitating these conversations and having me on and having me be part of this community. Thank you.
All the links to connect with Katya are in our show notes at thepowerfulladies.com. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening and leave us a rating and review. They are critical for podcast visibility. Come join us on Instagram at powerfulladies. And if you're looking to connect directly with me, visit karaduffy.com or Kara_Duffy on Instagram. You can also find both myself and Powerful Ladies on TikTok. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode with a new amazing guest. Until then, I hope you're taking on being powerful in your life. Go be awesome and up to something you love.